So today on the Ortho Perspective, we're joined by Preston Alexander. Previously, Preston and I talked about just kind of the overview of what he's doing, breaking down finance in med tech, hospital systems, insurance, etc. But today, what I wanted to do is specifically talk to Preston about Meddevice and just kind of a financial breakdown on Meddevice. So welcome, Preston.
Great to be back, Steve. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah. So previously we talked about, in the med tech device, as more and more money is made, it seems like there's kind of a tipping point when a company goes from, really wanting to help the industry be innovative, et cetera. And that shift kind of goes towards their shareholder wealth, making a profit, et cetera. Um, I know that you have a lot of examples and you've broken down a lot of med tech companies. And, is this exactly what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, like if we just look at the life cycle, I guess, of any company. So I work mostly in the startup realm, but I've worked for large publicly traded companies as well. It's like, and then this is, by the way, caveat. I'm not like
Right.
down with capitalism, profit is bad, equal, money is
Yeah.
evil kind of a person. But just in the natural life cycle, right? I start a company. And then I don't know, it's very popular to go raise VC money these days. So I'm gonna go raise VC money. That's a business. A VC is a business, and they
Mm-hmm.
have shareholders too that they raise money from and want to return profits to. So, we're all working towards the same end, which is to make more money and to make a profit. And what are the pathways to do that? They're to go public, or they're to keep raising money, keep getting a higher valuation, and then sell it to somebody else. And then we know in the device world, you're rarely going to go public. And I'm going to guess that either Medtronic, Stryker, Johnson and Johnson, maybe Intuitive, there's 7 companies that are going to buy you, Boston Scientific, whatever. And so to your point, I mean, what are we been really talking about? We're talking about things that can be really impactful. Clinical things can be amazing and
Correct.
disruptive and impactful. But from a business perspective, it's about an exit. It's about profit. It's about selling to the next thing to, then go launch your own venture fund and do that all over again. So yeah, I mean that's what we see because it's just sort of the natural life cycle of business.
Yeah. And even you and I talked previously where I've been in med device for 30 years. Early on in my career with Depew in the early 90s, I remember celebrating, or Depew was celebrating, hitting the $500 million worldwide sales. And I just looked it up today, in fact. And in 2022, Depew Synthes had $8.6 billion in worldwide sales. Now, there's been many acquisitions along the lines, but that is almost 19 times what it was, 30 years ago, which is a staggering number when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. And then it's interesting. I mean, and healthcare is unique in this way. And I mean, there's obviously other massive industries, oil
Right.
or something like that. But, Johnson and Johnson did $100 billion last
Mm-hmm.
year. Of course, COVID was a big part of it. And then, okay, cool, good for Johnson and Johnson. United Healthcare did, well over $300 billion in revenue. And Johnson Johnson, by the way, is a global company, and United Healthcare is just in the United States. So healthcare is just this, it is both a behemoth and a monolith at the same
Right.
time.
Right. So I read one of your breakdowns on, I believe it was Intuitive Surgical, where you just kind of broke down the players involved with a med device company.
Yeah.
So would you kind of break down the way you see a med device company and the players?
Yeah, that's so there's a few main players that I always think of when I think of med device. One really big one is gonna, obviously the device company and
Mhm.
then the market they're selling to. So typically hospitals, health systems, everyone wants to like, to sell to the Cleveland Clinic or whatever. Um, and then you have GPOs. So for those who don't know, group purchase organizations, which basically contract with hospitals to aggregate their buying power and then negotiate lower prices on their behalf. So because, say you have a one-off 400-bed hospital, you can't negotiate as good a pricing with Boston Scientific if you're, again, like the Cleveland Clinic, who has thousands and thousands of beds, and they're like, we buy more, so lower price. So the GPO effectively is a middleman that's going to help, lower the cost. And then you have distributors is the other one that I think of as the key in there, is because, and distributor is a word that I suppose covers all manner of sin. And but the big ones are the box movers, the McKessons of the world that make like a 3% margin because they literally charge fees, and that's about all they do. Cardinal, those guys, Medline, obviously. And then we've seen a real interesting shift lately, though. I mean, not when I say lately, I mean, we're talking 10 years or a little more.
Well, healthcare moves extremely slow.
Right, so. Right. Well, of all the distributors looking around and saying, we're moving all this product, we know exactly what the price is because they have to, there's a whole rebate system in there. So they know how much they're buying for, and then how much the device company sells it to the end user for, and blah, blah, blah. And they said, hang on a second, our margins are 2-3%. Let's get some of that device money. And so Medline has a huge portfolio of branded products. Cardinal is like the glove leader nowadays in surgical gloves. McKesson sells a ton of post-acute stuff. So all these big distributors have seen the gold on the mountainside, and they're chasing after it too. So those are really the sort of four big actors in this ecosystem of the med device kind of landscape.
Yeah. And then I'm assuming on the distributor side, as they're getting more and more into distributing their own product, that's a med device or other supplies for hospitals, I am sure that is impacting their contracting with GPOs, et cetera, from the rebate programs and things like that.
Yeah. And, you think about like because that's the sort of undercurrent here. And you talk about things are just getting bigger and bigger. And one of the reasons why on the device side is because of these intermediaries, and because of, I suppose with good intention, what they were started with, right? Like, I'm a hospital. I don't have a lot of buying power, so I'll use a GPO. Great. I also don't want to order from 17 different supplier. So I'm going to just contract with one distributor. And the distributor's like, great, we're going to serve you. That's amazing. We'll charge you for our services, but whatever. But hey, by the way, device companies, you also are now going to be on the hook to me for these fees. If you want to be on my GPO and access all my hospitals, 3% on all your revenue. Mm-hmm. And then the distributor says, oh, you want to know where I'm selling all of your products? Great. Tracing fees, 2%. Every time I send you a tracing every month, I need a percentage of those tracings. And the device company says, I mean, yeah, sure, whatever. Oh, hey, hospital, by the way, 7% increase next year on everything we sell you. And by the way, we're the only one on your GPO contract, and we're whatever. And if you drop our line on this side, then we're going to increase your price on this other thing that I know you can't get anywhere. And it just becomes this whole big financial shell game of passing on costs and fees. And then we're just adding to this upward spiral. Like, that's one of the big accelerators for why DePuy and everybody else is like, oh, it only took us, it took us 100 years to hit, 100 million or,
500 million,
whatever. Yeah. $100 million. And now it takes us, 10 to get to 7 billion.
Right. And I mean, is what this is doing is eliminating competition, and like you said, good intentions, and kind of what I have equated this to as the easy button from Staples, is this can become an easy button for hospitals or hospital systems. But I am seeing that the elimination of competition is drastically driving up price in ways that they don't realize, and that you just did lay out, that I wasn't even aware of. All, tracing fee. I'd never heard what a tracing fee is.
Yep.
Yeah.
The worst.
So kind of here, like, part of what I like to do is offer different perspective and view is how do we break away from this, or how do we help hospital systems, or even, I know some ambulatory surgery centers are on GPOs as well. How do we educate them as this may not actually be the best way for them.
I think, I mean, it's a tough one. I think the most important thing, especially from like where you sit and where a lot of, reps or smaller device companies sit,
Mhm.
is that it's empathy is going to be really important, because just the burden that's on those departments, purchasing departments, clinical departments, like even the big health systems that, are making like inordinate amounts of money and they're like evil or whatever, they're still, Sally, who is the buyer for the OR, and she's just getting hammered left, right, and center and hit up constantly with all this stuff. And it's really difficult to
Mhm.
get wade through all that morass. And same with clinicians. I mean, they have so much on their plate. So as much as we can first understand what they're dealing with, and then second, communicate to them sort of this perspective, and learn what they're dealing with, like from their contract side, because every hospital is allowed to buy off contract to a certain percentage. What percentage have they hit so far? How can we get, things in there? Because a lot of the time, the patients and the clinicians suffer when we can't get some of these new types of devices and products into the
Mhm.
hospital. And it's because of all these locked up contracts, 3-year GPO cycles, BS. But we're missing out on a lot of great companies and a lot of great devices and cost savings a lot of the time too. Like they think that GPO is the lowest price. I got news, not even close.
Correct. It's not
Uh,
even close.
yeah. So on the rep side, it's like, how much can you do to spend the time to build a relationship that starts with empathy, to then try to work together to help them, because they're so inundated with everything, make their job as easy as possible. And then if you're on the health system buyer side, try to understand the nuance of like the contract and be open to seeing what else is out there, and really, do the work. And I know it's hard and it's overloaded, but to actually say, okay, this, I'm not as compliant. I'm on, premier super double secret tier or whatever it is. Whatever, ascend or super ascend now or whatever they have. If I actually drop off in this one category, like let me see how it's going to affect my total spend, and is it enough to bring in a higher clinical quality product at maybe a par cost or a slightly lower cost. Like, yeah, it's upfront work, but to just go out and do it, even
Right.
though it sucks and there's, it's more
Well,
effort.
well, if nothing else, the way I look at it as a consumer is the more options you bring in just creates a competition, which then gives you the ability also to, you know, if you don't switch, go back to your current supplier and and just let competition help the facility, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's sort of like arguably, it's again always best intentions. Like it got out of hand. It was like way out of hand, like
Yeah,
back in the day when like every doctor got to pick whatever they wanted. And it was like these overflowing supply rooms with like 80 different
right.
things of the one product. But now we've swung way far back to the other direction, where we
Mhm.
have these, rule by committee, and it's mostly representative of like finance. And there's like maybe, the doctor or nurse can make it to this VAC committee meeting this week, but like typically like they're busy. Um, so how do we, swing it back so we have more voices there and not just this sort of legacy beholden to these contracts and GPOs and all that
Right.
kind of stuff.
Because the status quo is definitely better for those people, so they do not want it to shift.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So, well, Preston, I appreciate your time. It was great talking again. And again, if someone wants to contact you, is LinkedIn the best way?
Yeah, no, LinkedIn's always where I'm hanging out. So come find me on LinkedIn, and I have links on LinkedIn to other places where I hang out. So you can always just Preston Alexander. I'll be around.
Awesome. I appreciate your time, Preston, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds great. Thanks again, Stu.
Yep.